Now that you've explored the string and some of its methods, let's take a look at the number and some things that it allows us to do. I'm going to do this in a brand new file. First up, let's go ahead and close all of our currently open files to simplify things just a little bit. And right here in the objects directory, we can call this one number-methods.js. And we're going to start by creating a number to work with. Let num equal, and you can pick whatever number you want. Just make sure we have some decimal places in it. I'm going to go with 103.941. Awesome. Now down below, let's start messing around with the methods we have on our numbers. With numbers, there are infinitely less useful methods available to us. There's just not that much going on since most of the math operations we do are done via the operators we already explored. One great one, though, is the toFixed method. This allows us to specify the number of decimal places we would like to preserve. We could specify 1 to just keep the 9, or 2 to keep 9,4, and have it look a bit more like formatted currency. Let's go ahead and explore this. We'll use console.log to make sure whatever work we do actually shows up somewhere, and in here it is num.toFixed. The toFixed method takes a single argument, a number, the number of digits you want to keep. 1 for 1, 3 for 3, or in our case, we could just keep 2 digits to keep things looking similar to a currency. Now that we have this in place, let's go ahead and move into the browser and run this file and see what we get. That would be node number methods.js. When I run it, what do I get? I get 103.94 showing up. Here we were able to customize the amount of decimal places. I could trim this down to 1 if I wanted to just see the first one. Right here, I just get 9, or we could crank it up to something big like 10, in which case it would just add on some zeros. Right here, we get that number showing up. Using toFixed is one of the handy methods. As I mentioned, there really aren't many more that we're going to find ourselves using throughout the course, but I will show you where the documentation lives. In the browser, that is mdn number, and the result we're looking for is this first one, the reference for the number. And once again, we're just going to focus on that left-hand side table of contents. Now, all of the properties for the number aren't particularly useful. I've never used any of these when creating an application, either for myself or for others, even if that application was data intensive. Down below, we have some of the methods available to us, like the one we just explored, toFixed sitting right here. As you can tell, there are quite a fewer methods available for the number than for the string. Now, with the number, we don't just have the number itself to explore. There's also a math object made available to us, which has other things that allow us to do things with numbers. Let's explore that as well. mdn math. The math global is available to us in our script, much like console is. We don't have to do anything in order to get access to it. It's provided to us by the language. Here on the left-hand side, if we go down to the methods, we have quite a few different math-related methods. For example, we have one that allows us to round a given number. Down below, we have round. We also have one for generating a random number, for squaring numbers. All sorts of math-based operations live on this math object. Let's go ahead and take a quick moment to just mess around with a couple of them to see how it works. I'm going to switch over to the terminal and then back over to Visual Studio Code, and we'll use one of these down below. Let's go ahead and start with that round method. So to access math, we use uppercase math, and then we access methods on it, like console.log. So math.round. Now round takes the number that we actually want to round. So we're going to pass in the num variable up above. And in this case, it's going to round it. Since we are already at 0.9, it's going to round it up. If we were at 0.4, it would have rounded it down. Let's go ahead and actually print this guy so we can see the result. Up front, console.log, wrapping everything in parentheses, opening and closing, and then rerunning the script from the terminal. Right here, we get 104 printing to the screen. We're rounding up from 103.941. Now we can also force it to go in one direction or another. So let's take this line and duplicate it a couple of times. I'm going to add it twice down below, and we'll look at two other methods available to us. One is math.floor. This forces us to round down to the nearest integer. So that would give us 103, and its counterpart is the ceiling method, which is shortened to CEIL. This forces us to always round up, even if we were at a number like 1.1. Now, if we were to run the script, we could see those two results showing up. Right here, we get 103 for floor and 104 for ceiling. Now, there are other math operators for more complex things. If we were creating some sort of math-based calculator, we could do things like calculate tangents and all sorts of interesting things like that. But for most of our applications, as you're going to find in programming, the math really isn't that bad, unless you have some sort of math-specific application. If we're trying to create a new social media application or an e-commerce store, the most complex math we have is probably adding a few numbers and incrementing things by 1. It really isn't too bad. There's just one more method I want to explore before we go, and this is the math.random method. This is a popular one for generating a random number. Imagine I wanted to generate a random number between 0 and 10. I would use math.random with a few other math operators to get that done. So math.random generates a number between 0 inclusive and 1 exclusive. So what exactly would that look like? Well, let's go ahead and run it to see what I'm talking about. Over in VSC, let random num equal, we're going to use math.random, and as we saw, we don't need any arguments, we just call it, and we get the random number back. And then we log it, console.log random num. So this is going to generate a number between 0 and 1. So if I run it, what do I get? I get 0.1408 with a whole other bunch of numbers after it. I run it again, and I get a different number. So this number could go from something like actually 0 to something as great as 0.9999999. Now that's not particularly useful, since we usually want to generate a number between two numbers, like between 0 and 10 or between 0 and 100, something along those lines. Well, using math.random with some of the other things we just explored, we can actually get that done. So let's explore this. This is going to get a little complex, but it's a useful thing to be able to do. Right here, we're going to define two variables, min, let min equal, and max. We'll set the min equal to 10 and let max equal 20. So let's say we're trying to generate a random number between 10 and 20 for our game or for our application. There are a lot of great use cases for generating some sort of random number in a specific range. Now we have this number, the parameters set up. Let's go ahead and actually use them to create a formula that's a little more meaningful. Because remember, right now, random num is going to be between 0 and 0.99999. That's not what we want. We want it to be between 10 and 20, and we want whole numbers only. So I don't want to be able to get 11.34, for example. To get that done, we use a pretty common formula. We're going to see this throughout the course. We'll explore it now, and then we'll use it over and over again anytime we actually want to create something random. We multiply math.random, that value, by the max minus the min. So max minus min, what's that going to give us? That's going to give us 10, which means now we're going from 0 to whatever 10 times 0.9999999 is, which would be 9.9999999. So now this is the range we're working with. What we're going to do from here is add 1. So plus 1, and if we visualize that, it would now bring us up from 9.99999 to 10.99999, repeating. Now this still doesn't really get us what we want. We're going to take things one step further by putting an opening parenthesis here, a closing parenthesis here, and then at the very beginning, we are going to use math.floor. We're using math.floor to convert this potential decimal down to a whole number. So what's the new range? The new range is from 0 all the way up to 10, since we're converting 10.99999 down to 10 itself. So now we have a situation where we're getting whole numbers between 0 and 10, but we wanted it between 10 and 20. So what do? We take that and we add the min on. And there we go. This formula is a little complex, but it is going to allow us to successfully generate a random number between two numbers. By adding on the min, we go from 0 to 10, and we go from 10 to 20. Let's go ahead and see this in action. I am going to save the file and rerun things. Right here, we get 20, then I get 19, then I get 12, I get 12 again, I get 17. And if we were to change the input, we could see that work as well. Let's do a random number between 0 and 1. So that's like flipping a coin. 0 heads, 1 tails. I'll run it a few times. We get 0, we get 1, 0, 0, 0, 1. So using this formula, we'll be able to generate a random number. Now it's challenge time. You're going to go ahead and use what we learned about generating a random number to actually create a little guessing game. So I'm going to remove some lines, and down below, we'll add in a challenge area. And your job is to create a function. The function is going to take in the person's guess, a single argument. It's then going to generate a random number in a given range and figure out if their guess was correct. So for us, we could say the range is between 1 and 5. And if the guess is correct, we'll return true. So true if correct, and then false if not correct. Whoops, F-A-L-S-E. Now, example usage might look a little bit like this. Console.log to print the result. We could call it something like make guess, and we could pass in 1. So if the random number is 1, then I would get true back. If it's not, I would get false back. Once you actually create this little guessing game function, just run the program a few times. Make sure you see false a few times, and then make sure you also eventually get true when your guess is actually correct. And you can just repurpose the code up above. You can cut it out from up here and move it into the new function that you create. Take some time to knock this out, pause the video, and when you're done, click play. All right, how'd that one go? Hopefully you were able to get that done without too much trouble. Let make guess equal a function. We're going to take in the user's guess. I'll call this one guess. And then we're going to set up the function body. Does it make sense to have a default here? Not really. We want to actually take the guess in. Now, what are we trying to do inside of this function? Well, we're trying to generate a random number. So I can take this code from up above and repurpose it. I'm going to copy and paste it in. And then I'm going to adjust the range. So for this game, I said a good minimum would be 1 and a good maximum would be 5. Now we have the random number generated, and all we need to do is figure out if the guess equals the random number. Now remember, we could use an if statement, and then we could return booleans in the if statement code block, but we can also just return our comparison operator. So right here, I can check if guess equals random num. If this is true, if they equal each other, the returned true will be the case. If they don't equal each other, this will resolve to false, and we will see a return value of false. So once again, this is the one-line equivalent, much like we explored the one-line equivalent in the last video. Now that we have this in place, we can actually test out our little game. Over in the terminal, I can run the program a few different times. I should get false most of the time, but if I run it enough, at some point, I should get true. And there we go. I just got true right there. Apparently, the random number generated was indeed 1. And you can imagine that later on, when we actually know how to connect JavaScript to the browser, we could have the guess come from user input, and we could display whether or not they got it right to the actual browser window. For now, as we explore the basics, we're still just sticking with these script files. So that's where we're going to stop for this video. We learned about string methods in the last one and number methods in this one. There's just one more small topic I want to cover before we wrap this section up. In the next video, we're going to talk about a different way to define variables in JavaScript. I'm excited to get to it, and so let's go ahead and dive right in.